Atrast Vala, brothers and sisters, I am Desher Tarat. My videos pertain to all things related to the Dragon Age series. The content my channel provides assumes you've already played at least one of the Dragon Age games, so this is the blanket spoiler warning for the video. If you want to help grow my channel, feel free to comment below with suggestions and other video ideas. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, today we're going to be introducing a champion I seriously enjoyed playing this time around. She's a lawful good woman who will protect her sister and her family ferociously. A supporter of the Templars, the City Guard, and a condemner of demons and abominations, introducing the Champion of the Just. While usually hawks can be any sex without too much of an issue, this one must be female due to her romance partner being Sebastian. The Champion of the Just is a diplomatic hawk woman overall, however she will be hostile to those who threaten her sister, her family, and demons in general. Honestly, this was a really fun build for me to play, and honestly makes me reconsider my overall disdain regarding Dragon Age 2. The Champion of the Just was a young girl living in Highever for a time. Her mother and her father had just moved there before she was born. Malcolm was very glad to see that she didn't take after his magic and was eager to see her become a skilled warrior. The only concern he seemed to have was she had a fascination with the children's game Templars and Maleficar, the local area's cops and robbers. Leandra would tell him it was only a game and for him not to fuss over it. He opted to listen to his wife and allowed the champion to play her games. The couple had become pregnant again and had opted to move elsewhere for the time being, with the Templars finding the trail for Malcolm. Malcolm had left Hawk in charge of Leandra for a time while they were settling a bit south of Ban Loren's lands, painfully close to the Circle of Magi in Ferelden. Malcolm would keep his family there for a rather long time until Bethany herself started to show signs of magic. She was seemingly proficient in it and was showing the signs rather early for her age. It was here that Hawk learned of what they did to children who were mages, and she would vow to protect her sister at the cost of her life. However, she realized it was oddly hypocritical for her to vow to protect her sister without wanting to protect her little brother, and so in all for the case of fairness, she vowed to protect her brother as well. As Bethany was becoming more skilled in magic, her ability to hide it wasn't necessarily as great as it should have been, and so Malcolm opted to move them slightly further away, having heard that Redcliffe was doing rather well and the Templars had a surprisingly low presence there. And so the family had decided to move over there next. Hawk would tell Carver of what had fallen upon them, and he seemed apprehensive to help. The champion would talk him into his responsibility towards family and how together they would have to protect their little sister, because she couldn't fight, because if she did fight, she would probably end up using magic accidentally. Carver groaned as he agreed to help. Hawk would return this acceptance with a hug, and the two of them would begin training in two-handed weaponry together, as they felt that it was the best way for them to take down those nasty Templars. The champion would rustle his hair after every training session, while Malcolm would be off training Bethany. They would be training each other, and while Carver would never be able to learn of it, she would let him win a few times. Granted, he actually did win once or twice around the time when they were both shipped off to Ostagar. Getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but after the Templars had caught wind of the two apostates, they would have to move for a final time to Lothering. Lothering would be the final spot for the family, and it is there they would hopefully stay until the end of their days. They would start a farm together, and it was a nice little property away from the actual town, so they were able to rest and relax there away from the Templar scrutiny. It was at Lothering where the family would finally grow up. Some kids would often pick on Carver and Bethany, being rude and obnoxious to them as young teenagers are to each other. Carver made Bethany promise not to tell anyone and tried to get the both of them to deal with it themselves rather than calling for their big sister to help. Hawk had noticed that something was off with Carver, and she sat him down and talked to him about it. The champion had to work with some delicacy into the topic, but he inevitably came around and confessed that some people were picking on him and Bethany since they were the new kids and didn't have a lot of nice clothes, since they moved so much. The champion's face would redden as she felt a sweltering fit of rage come on. Why would anyone do that to her little sibling? She stood up and marched over to them, much to Carver's dismay. She would walk up to the group and get a confession from each of them. She nodded firmly as they each bragged about the torturous things they did to Carver and Bethany. Soon enough, Hawk had heard enough after that and started a fight with a lot of them. They weren't beaten bloody or anything, but they were beaten until she forced an apology out of them and made sure that they wouldn't do it again. Carver stood there, awestruck by his big sister. After that, the two of them would train even more together, as Carver had realized just how cool his big sister really was. Hawk was quite proud of Carver, as he was starting to really get better at his swordsmanship. After another 2 years of living in Lothering, Malcolm had fallen ill. He died a few days later. Hawk and the family would grieve tremendously at the loss, Hawk consoling both her sister and her brother, with Carver sadly stonewalling her for a longer time than Bethany. However, it ended up working for the best because Bethany needed the comfort right away more than her brother Carver. The family had fallen on hard times again as they realized they would need to get some more money. With Kaelin's army recruiting for a battle against the Darkspawn, Carver and Hawk had signed up for the army for the money. The deal the family had was that Hawk would send back all of her payments and that Hawk and Carver would be living off of Carver's payments. They would march with the king's army to Ostagar, only to be betrayed by Loghain. After surviving, Hawk and Carver would book it for Lothering to warn their family of the impending Darkspawn invasion and that they would have to leave. Now. During their year of servitude, Hawk and Bethany would find themselves exposed to a different sort of mage. They would have to fight off a few blood mages here and there, Kirkwall being infamous for housing a lot of practitioners of the forbidden magic. Hawk had slowly begun to realize why the circle wasn't such a bad thing, and Bethany would begin to realize it herself. Hawk would constantly console her, however, telling her that she would never turn into those abominations. The year was painfully long for the both of them, as they both saw what could happen if Bethany just slipped ever so slightly. Hawk's views on the Templars and the circles would of course change to a more positive outlook, however this was not the life for her sister. Bethany would never fall to such corruption, and Hawk was very certain of this. After finishing off their year of servitude, Hawk and Bethany would attempt to negotiate a guarding detail with Bartrand for his Deep Roads expedition. Hawk would of course sympathize with her sister. She didn't want her falling into Templar hands and thrown into the gallows. Hawk was worried for her sister but would not show it. Hawk had sworn to protect her sister to her dying breath, and she was going to follow through on that, especially after failing Carver. The champion of the just would snap back into reality as a beardless dwarf would offer them a partnership if they had obtained everything they would need. Hawk would go see if Aveline needed anything to be done and offered herself for employment if the guard would need it. After accepting the job offer from Aveline, she would make her way down to the Chantry, walking in on Sebastian Vales placing the bounty on the board. She blinked a few times after seeing him. He was cute. She would walk up to the board and take the job, wanting to impress the man. She would make her rounds trying to collect 50 sovereigns. She would quickly condemn and harshly berate Anders and Merrill. These were dangerous mages that would draw attention to her if they hung around, and would especially bring attention to Bethany. This was not something Hawk would be particularly fond of. She would ensure that Karen would be reinstated with the Templar. She would send Fainriel to the Circle, seeing as he was a powerful mage, and would hand Contosion over to the Qunari. She thought she was doing him a service, but if he did not think so, she wished for him to go back. Being the upstanding citizen she was, she would not kill Kelder and keep him alive, as she felt it was the city guard's duty to handle the situation. Taking the law into her own hands could put Bethany in danger. She didn't want to attract attention to her or her sister. When Anders would come on to her, she would reject him. He was a dangerous man. She didn't want anything to do with him. She also wouldn't want to deal with Fenris, as his opinion of mages made her feel on the defensive regarding her sister. However, when he would go on his anti-magic tirade, she would merely let him blow off the steam, knowing he was just angry most of the time and not really meaning what he said. Or at least she hoped. She would actually find herself with an odd level of friendship with Isabella. While she could not condone her freely giving of herself, she would feel a strong kinship with the woman like the sister she never had. After experiencing the dangers of Kirkwall, Hawk would decide to leave Bethany behind during the Deep Roads expedition, only imagining the kind of horrors that they would face. After returning from the Deep Roads expedition, she would find that the Templars had finally found them out. She was shocked by this, and she would draw her sword and ready herself for combat. Glaring at the Templars, she would declare that her sister would go to the Circle over her dead body. Bethany would step in and prevent it from escalating any further, and Hawk felt absolutely devastated by this, not realizing that she had made a big mistake. Maybe if Bethany went with her on the Deep Roads expedition, this wouldn't happen. However, all was not lost, as Bethany would send letters keeping them updated on how she was happy she could finally be free to be herself. This would only further cement Hawk's views on the circles being not all that bad. From this experience, Hawk would often blame herself for her sister leaving and her brother dying. This would focus her into being easily swayed by desires for power. If Iduna is still alive, Hawk would probably be swayed by the idea of powers from the books. Desire demons are her weakness, as her desires for powers to bring back her sister, her desire to have her family back, especially after Leandra dies, and her desire for things to be back to the way they used to, will cause desire demons to often find their way into her heart as a result. When dealing with the Qunari, she will attest to to how they should be abiding by the laws of Kirkwall, considering how they've been sitting there for the past 4 years and doing nothing. While she does not support the riling against them as the extremists believe, she does not support Qunari either, supporting a lawful takedown of them if necessary. These heretics will fall because the Maker would do it through the truth and not because of some lies spread because of some upstart. She will again deny Meryl in regards to helping her get the relic, but as the Blood Champion she finds herself going out there to do the quest anyway. The logic she will have will primarily be revolving around the fact that if she can make Meryl see what she is doing to herself, then Meryl will leave the mirror alone. She will refuse to hand the relic over to Meryl, keeping it for herself. Interestingly enough, she will aid Anders in his hunt for the Tranquil Solution, remembering a letter sent to her from Bethany that mentioned about Sir Ulrich. She would agree to help him if only to protect her sister from that monster. After Anders loses control, she would tell the girl to go back to the circle, as that would probably be the safest place for her for now that Ulrich is dead. When Bartrand reveals to her that he's been set up, she allows him to live. She would not kill an innocent man. Speaking of dwarves, she would convince Varric not to kill Bartrand. I brought Anders along and he healed Bartrand, if only temporarily enough for Varric to feel for the guy and not kill him. But regardless, Hawk would push for Varric to allow Bartrand to live, much to Varric's dismay. Not one for being unfair to the other manly archer in her life, she would aid Sebastian and fall slightly under the Desire Demon's spell when Lady Harriman was revealed to have consorted with her. When the quest is finished, she will push Sebastian into taking back his homeland, as she believes he can better serve the Maker as a ruler of the city, seeing as how Kirkwall has been falling to pieces without a strong leadership. She will aid Fenris in hunting down the slavers, offering the elven girl a job at her mansion, being genuinely offended that Fenris would think that she wants a slave, and telling him to back down because Hawk was offering her a job. She would let Fenris do the negotiating with the woman, glad that he opted to kill her. When dealing with Fainriel, she would go through the quest, killing all the demons without hesitation. However, I have a little headcanon on how the Desire Demon went. If you would be interested in reading about that, let me know in the comments below, and I'll post it somewhere and share it for you all to see. After the final bout with demons, when Fainriel would beg to be made tranquil, she would oblige and turn the boy into a tranquil, feeling it being the only safe option. I went to Legacy around this time in my playthrough, but you can do it whenever you want to. But to explain how things went down, Hawk would find herself siding with Jenica. The idea of potentially ending the Blights was something she felt a keen interest in doing, because it would be better to end it altogether rather than go through the cycles again and again and again. When the Qunari finally decide to invade, the champion will aid Isabella with the tome and tell her to keep it so she can give it to Castillon. Hawk believes that it'll take just enough time for Castillon to get there for her to convince Isabella to give it back to the Qunari, and they can kill Castillon when he arrives. Perfect plan. Until Isabella runs away with the tome. That bitch! Hawk marches off to the compound and tries to convince the Arishok to release the elves into their custody. She would ensure that they were given a fair trial, but would be critical of how the guards handled this when Aveline confesses there had been reports of it. Regardless, the Qunari would still attack. She would make her way up to Hightown and run into Orsino and her little sister. She was glad that Bethany was alright. Using her grace, she will tell Orsino and Meredith that now is not the time for them to be fighting when they're dealing with invaders. And when Orsino pushes for her to be in charge, she will gracefully accept, going with Meredith's plan to make a frontal assault. When Isabella returns, she will tell the Arishok that Isabella will be punished according to their laws, and fight the Arishok when he declares the challenge. At the beginning of Act 3, the champion will make an open declaration against Orsino, her reasoning being similar to Elthena's at least. If he wants things to change, he should go about it differently. Hawk would end up siding with Meredith publicly. However, in regards to privacy, she thinks it would be best if someone took the Viscount's seat to ensure that the tensions may slow down. She wouldn't think of herself to do it until Sebastian brings it up, to which she'll like the idea and push for it. Hashtag Hawk for Viscount, hashtag make Kirkwall great again. The thought crossing her mind that she could make Bethany into the court enchanter so that Bethany would have a reason to leave the circle and come back into her life. Speaking of Sebastian, when doing his personal quest of meeting Liliana, she will try to appease the Divine to do an exalted march on Kirkwall if things go south. The champion honestly believes that they already have and wants it to happen earlier rather than later. It would be here that Sebastian would offer an alliance between Kirkwall and Starkhaven when he retakes the city. Hawk would feel so honored and offer her aid when called upon. The closest thing to an I love you she's gonna get from the guy, at least as far as this game is concerned. After taking care of that, she'll aid Aveline with the guard complaints and allow Aveline's reputation to speak for itself. Aveline is a fine guard captain, and she is proud of her friend. She will appeal to Alistair to support her bid for Viscount, and will be frank with Alistair that she feels that Ferelden is no longer her home, and she identifies as a Kirkwaller these days. days. When the Templars request for her aid, she will find herself inclined to aid them when she gets to the quest where she'll have to choose between sparing innocents or killing them for associating themselves with blood mages. She will choose to let them go. Killing them would not be right, as they committed no crime and deserved no punishment. She will aid Meredith during the quest lines and will send Emil back to the circle. When the group kidnaps her sister, she will spare Karen, as she feels his heart was in the right place, seeing as he later repented. When arriving at the Wounded Coast, she is out for blood. They kidnapped her sister, and she would make an example of them. Nobody messes with her sister, period. Thrask would be able to appeal to the champion's reasoning, and it would work. She is well aware that Meredith seems to be slipping, but when Grayset would attack, that would be enough. She'd slaughter everyone that would fight her in a viciousness that Varric would actually leave out because it just felt so out of character for her. When Cullen would ask what she would have done with the conspirators, she would recommend killing them all and say that the boy was one of Grace's who just so happened to change his heart after he realized he was on the losing side, just like last time. Regarding other quests, she would allow Varric to keep the idol. Was it Varric that convinced her, the idol whispering to her? Hawk didn't know, but it felt like she could trust him with it. When Castillon would confront Isabella, the champion wouldn't negotiate and kill the man. Hawk would tell Isabella she knew it was not the right thing to do to let him live. When aiding Fenris, she refuses to even talk to Daenerys, but encourages Fenris to not kill his sister like she did with Varric all those years ago. She would be very happy that Meryl would choose to destroy the Illuvian and proud of her, even if she had to kill her keeper to see how far she had fallen. Hawk will aid Anders in his own quest up until he asks her to go to the Chantry. She would question him as to why they would even need to go to the Chantry, do anything regarding a ritual or potion to split him from justice. After finding out he had lied to her, she refuses to do it. During the final confrontation, she will find herself siding with the Templars. While she knows that the man responsible for this is Anders, she also knows that the people will want more. It will feel so dissatisfying for one man to die for such a grave crime. Feeling that Grand Cleric Althena deserved justice, and seeing as how upset Sebastian was, she killed Anders. After making their ways to the gallows, Hawk will agree with Orsino, as much as it's not too late to revoke the right and they can do what Orsino mentioned without bloodshed. After it's made abundantly clear that Meredith will not take that as an answer, the champion of the just will move forward with Meredith, plowing through the mages that fight against her. When some mages come to the Templars and surrender, she will accept their surrender because they're not going to make this any more bloody than they have to. After killing Orsino, she would see her sister become a mess, and her heart would leap out to her and want to console her like the old days. When Meredith marches in and demands that she kill Bethany, Hawk takes a harsh tone and takes a stand that she will not kill her sister. After a few moments of intense staring, Meredith relents. This, of course, is shown to be more a stay of execution in Meredith's eyes when the final boss battle begins. The champion of the just takes the two-handed skill tree. She is a woman who likes to remind those who dare to mess with her sister she'll break their teeth in. She wields a cumbersome and massive weapon as a result. She also takes Second Wind, Bolster, Tremor, Pommel Strike, and Taunt, being a two-handed tanking warrior. She will also take the Templar specialization as a sign of her dedication to the faith, and she will also take up the Reaver tree primarily because this build is to maximize efficiency without healers for obvious reasons. Alright, that wraps up everything for this build. Have any build suggestions, comments, questions, channel recommendations? If so, hit me up on Twitter at DesherTarrat or leave a comment below. Thank you so much for watching my video, and God bless you. Have a good day.